And a very good and wonderful morning to everyone. Now, in chapter 11, number 1, we're talking about a separate section called specials. And the first one is the Dolly zoom. And in this session, we're going to look at an introduction, an example, and a discussion with what I've done, hopefully with some learning points to take to the future. So, on the left-hand side, you see Sydney Opera House, which is from a long distance with a narrow field of view, and we're much closer on the right hand side, and you can see the shot is totally different with a wide angle. So the good thing is that I've done the Sydney Opera House yesterday on the 14th of February, and I will demonstrate in a couple of seconds. And then way before that, on the 10th of January, we did a Staten Island kind of like looking into the plaza. And that was a different example, and thankfully I can compare the two. So if you're not sure what a Dolly zoom is, it's a camera effect that appears to undermine normal visual perception, and I'm going to demonstrate that here because I've got a video. Well, not I, Wikipedia has got a video, and what you can see in the centre is that you've got the object, and as the distance decreases, the field of view increases, and you get this kind of like weird effect. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I think what I'm going to do now is play a 20 and a 15-second demo, so roll the demo. So there we go, that was the example of them. So let's have a look at the details, and that is that we've got, first of all, the Sydney Opera House, and I'm just going to demonstrate something here, and that is that if we look at the aerial movement of the camera on the Sydney Opera House using Google Maps, I've actually moved the camera about 500 metres from the north here towards the Opera House to the south. Now if you can compare that with the Staten Island one, that's totally different in that what I've done there is I've moved the camera nearly 2 kilometres, that's 4 times the distance. In other words, from the south going up across Governor's Island in. So that's a huge learning point for me. I'm just going to reduce some of these and then talk them through, reduce the Chrome tabs that is. And so if we look at what was this? This was the Staten Island one, and this is where the learning points come in that what we've done is, I could make these files available if anybody wants them, and that is, as we've moved in, watch the field of view down here, which is 6.3, and then as we go up to the very end, we end up with the field of view at 24, so it's much wider. Now the thing is that I would say, and I'm not going to keep this super long, but if we start to look at the combination of the waypoint, shall we say, is you start off, and what I was trying to do was I was trying to get and to use a multi-grid overlay. Where's it gone? The grid. Yeah, show the guys. Oh, not that one. This is a more chatty style, by the way, rather than just a straightforward safe margins? No, thirds. So what I was doing is, although I've got a camera target in, I was trying to keep this bottom line here of the first elevation here of the building just on that line as I went through. And what you'll find is as you keep moving the timeline, it slightly moves, and that's where I'd put a keyframe in to try and keep it together. Remember, this was my very first go, my very first attempt to see what happens. Now you'll notice that I put more keyframes near the end here because it seemed to be jumping around. Now what I've learnt right now, and I think I picked this up on the documentation and I've used it very little, is if you click over and look at the speed graphs, you'll see the speed of these keyframes is a bit jumpy, where you can go through there. And what I've realised now is going on to, this was the Dolly zoom for the Sydney Opera House attempt 1, which was only yesterday, and once again I've used a field of view of 9, and I've ended up much wider field of view here at 47. But the thing is that if you go in to look at the field of view in terms of its, let's bring that up a bit, speed graph and value graph, if you look at the speed graph, I've got less waypoints here, or keyframes. So it's 1, 2, 3 and 4, and I'm finished. And you can see it's a bit wavy. But when I've gone on to the speed, I'm not sure if I did that or that's done. And this is the discussion point. It's just like a couple of ideas of how it's moved. And so I could maybe get that a lot better. I'm not sure what's going on there. But the point of it is to keep this video quite short. When I've gone into an identical one, but this time I've noticed that the one before, for some reason, I don't know, just perhaps that's me being a bit silly, but I did not use a camera target there. What I did use is an overlay just to keep it on. And then I thought, well, let's do it again. And, you know, again, I started again. And I put a camera target in, and this time with the field of view, I noticed, you know, I don't think I saved this, but I can do this live, which is absolutely fine on the demo, and that is that, let's just move this up. Yeah, that will do really nicely, because if we look at the value graph, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 and an end, so it's not many points, and it's kind of, you know, it's not super flat, but this is the, I don't know if it's, I'm looking for some kind of logarithmic or, I don't know, exponent, some kind of curve thing that starts off narrow and gets high at the end. But if we go on to the value graph, what I've actually found is that when we come in, and I'll just demonstrate with one key point, and I thought, well, if I put my mouse here and say that's more or less about in the middle, and then what I was doing is just dragging this up and dragging this one down. Similarly, I can drag this point sort of halfway up. This is not changing the value, by the way, it's changing the speed. And then I could bring, I was hoping to bring that a lot further down until those points actually meet up, and for some reason I could also turn that off. And my point here is that if you want to actually look, oh, that's a linear there. And this is where you could spend an awful lot of time, you know, messing around and adjusting. A long time. The point of this thing, just to finish up here, is that this special, chapter 11 is all about specials, was a technique known as the Dolly zoom, which I think is easily achievable if you pick the right object with some contrasting, interesting background, and then you can make something happen. And I've done two, and I'm quite confident if I did another one as a component to a bigger video, it will work okay. So I hope you picked up something in this, and say this is a special. The next special I'm doing is a whip zoom or a camera drop on a tilt, so I'm just going to experiment with that. So good luck, and I think this is the 27th video in the series. Okay, let's finish there.